Right. Hello again, everybody. My name is Rachel Bunting, and I, along with Donna, am one of the co-founders and editors of Asterales. Thank you so much for being here with us tonight to celebrate the launch of this brand new journal. Just a little bit of housekeeping. You may see that some of us have these weird virtual backgrounds. We are featuring some of the art that appears in the issue. So you may see some of the readers also have virtual backgrounds when they come on camera. Um, Usually taken directly from the journal, although Megan and Mandy, we gave them a little bit of freedom to pick something else from their arsenal if they wanted to, and if they're able to. If you don't see a reader with a virtual background that features art from the journal, we will pop a link to it in the chat. Some of us, the tech is not entirely working, so some folks it works for and some folks it doesn't. We'll also be putting official bios and social media links for our writers and artists in tonight's chat, so be sure to click on the links and give them a quick follow. So I'm going to make just a brief little opening statement and then we'll jump right in. And so I was thinking about this today. It's kind of funny when I think about the fact that it was only 7 months ago that I sent Donna an email asking if she had any interest in starting a literary journal. We'd both been sort of noodling on this idea separately for a while, and it came together pretty fast, and it's been a really fun labor of love to bring this to life. We named this journal Asterales after a large order of flowering plants that includes asters, sunflowers, and like so many more species. Families within the Asterales order are believed to have descended from a common ancestor, which seemed to us like a really excellent metaphor for how we see the evolution of the literary and visual arts and how they speak to each other, how they're constantly in conversation. This journal really would be nothing without our first contributors. And so I just want to say, like, we really could not be more grateful to our writers, Jason, Cindy, Travis, Joan, Amorak, Mike, and Joseph, and our visual artists, Lanicia, Mandy, Matt, Kyle, and Megan. You've trusted us and supported us, and we really hope that we've done your work justice because we are so in love with all of it. So thank you again. I also owe an incredible debt of gratitude to my co-founder and co-editor here. She kept us on track through the planning and the layout processes. She remained totally unruffled through some technical challenges with the website when I was panicking about the website. She was like, we'll figure it out. And she also prepared most of the social media content that you've seen and pretty much single-handedly put this reading together. I literally could not have done this without Donna. So thank you, Donna. And I just want to, before we dive into the readers, I just want to say, as writers and creators ourselves, Donna and I understand so well the desire and the impulse to share your work with others. We know how it feels to hope that your words or images spark some sort of warmth in the world at a time when the world is a really hard place to understand. We are determined to hold space for creativity, for joy and hope and community. We know the years ahead will bring challenges and obstacles, and we want to continue to hold that space for voices that are often ignored or overlooked. We understand that art is both a form of personal expression and resistance, both a solace and a celebration that we are here every single day, as Lucille Clifton said, between starshine and clay, continuing to create. And so we thank you so much for being here and being part of this community today. We're going to go ahead and get started with the actual fun part of tonight. So I'm going to put our first reader slash presenter on the spot. I am super excited to kick us off with Mandy Magnuson Hung, a collage artist and a friend from New Jersey. We actually have studios in the same art collective. I met Mandy about a year and a half ago at the opening reception for an art exhibit. And within just a few minutes of chatting with her, we were making sarcastic jokes together and talking about art. And I remember thinking that she had such cool girl energy, but in the kindest, most inclusive way. Her studio is really like a cozy little den with soft lighting and soft chairs and a really nice rug and a festival of supplies. Her collages are whimsical, thoughtful, and a little irreverent, which is one of my favorite things about her. I am so pleased to introduce you to Mandy. So, Mandy, I'm going to ask you to unmute, and then the floor is yours.
Okay. Hello. How do I do this? I suddenly feel very old and don't know how to start my video.
You should be able to click on the little camera icon at the bottom.
Ba-ba. Oh, hey, it says you can't start your video because the host has stopped it. I've been censorship. Just kidding. I don't know if you
Try
have to try
now. Try now.
it again. I will
Try
try it
now.
again. I'm gonna do it. Oh, did it work? Shoot.
Yep.
Hey, man. Hey. Hi. I'm Mandy. I'm slightly awkward. Um, so my training is not as an artist, but as an educator and a singer and as a historian. So the impulse to share something with others is deeply ingrained within me. And I like to say, actually, I make things, art, music, stories about how the past wasn't that great. We could be friends, you and me. And that's sort of me. I try to be honest with myself and others. I'm kind when I can be. And I'm working on having those hard boundaries that folks always talk about. Um, and like a lot of people, I was trapped in my house 5 years ago with very little to do. My museum work was 75% public facing, and I had no public to face. Save the two mandatory Zoom meetings a week that I had, my job didn't expect me to do anything. Um, and what would have been a dream at 13 was kind of a nightmare at 43. My anxiety was ratcheted up to new levels that I didn't even know I could be that anxious. Um, a friend suggested the 100 Days Project, and that's the thing where you do something artistic every day for 100 days, right? And they make you like take a pledge. I mean, very low key pledge. Um, and I was like, okay, well, I'm not an artist. I've never been an artist, but I could do this, sure. I can do one arty thing a day to shut my brain up. That sounds great. Um, I decided to do something with paper. On the first day, I pulled out a glue stick, cardstock, magazines, an old book on advertising, and I couldn't figure out why the glue stick smelled so weird, but I kind of, I leaned in hard, right? I found that the act of finding an image, cutting it out, placing it with other pieces of paper, sort of calmed my brain down. It gave me the chance to hyper focus on something other than illness and isolation. The next day, I went to make the second collage and looked a little more closely at the glue stick. It had an SPF rating of 50. Uh, so, funnily enough, that collage is still stuck together, but it does still smell like sunblock. So that's how it started, sort of messily, sort of in an ad hoc kind of way, amorphous ideas. And that's kind of how it has continued. In the last 5 years, I've collaged on paper, on a plastic mannequin head, on both sides of every card in a deck, including the Joker's, 216 sides of a Jenga game, the inside of a bottle cap. Sometimes the pieces are absurd. You'll see that on this side, right? The peep. Um, and sorry, sometimes they are absurd, right? The peep in space. And I make them because um, an idea makes me laugh, right? Or I stumble onto an image that's just sort of ridiculous and I'm like, I got to do something with this, hence peep in space. It lives in North Carolina now with a friend. Um, but sometimes they have a deeper meaning here, like the Fire Maiden. Um, I have an idea, right, and it breaks my heart or my brain, and I try to put myself back together by getting it down on paper. Um, and at the heart of it, right, it's just me. It's just me and a pair of scissors, a stack of magazines, and a real glue stick. Um, Collage is my meditation. It's how I find the doorway to a quiet place. I focus on my breathing to keep the cuts clean. I let outside sounds go in one ear and out the other without paying them any mind. Um, I extend grace to myself when the images come out wrong, knowing that allowing imperfection is a gift I give myself, right? It doesn't have to be perfect. It can't be perfect. And kind of letting go of that is a gift that I have prior to making collages never gave myself. Um, I share nearly everything I make online, even the ones that I look at and think, well, that went sideways. Um, I didn't want to, mind you. Again, perfect, right? Only wanting to show things that are your best. But I have this therapist who said that putting things on the socials was an easy way to get used to a different kind of gaze. So I throw myself and my art out into the ether, right? And hope it finds someone who really sees it. Even my sideways collages find a few admirers. Usually anyway, some of them are real stinkers. Um, this is the first time I've ever done this. I want to thank Rachel and Donna for this first opportunity to talk about my art with strangers. I hope that we can be friends, you and me. That's it.
Thank you so much, Mandy. I never knew your origin story in collage, and I love it. I think you should tell everyone that as like the first thing. You're like, "Hi, my name is Mandy, and here's how I started collage." That would be a really fun thing for me to watch personally. Also, I've literally never seen a stinker from Mandy on her Instagram. So if you have Instagram and you're not following Mandy yet, you should be. Her username is also really funny, and I'm going to put it in the chat right now.
It's very hard for me to be serious. I mean, it's not because I'm a historian and I know and can see history repeating itself, and that's like a super bummer, to put it mildly. And so I can be serious, but I do enjoy the opportunity to let my brain kind of go nuts.
Also, Donna put your correct handle in the chat, and I put an incorrect handle in, so I'm going to fix that
Oh
right.
yeah, it's got the underscore collage underscore
Yeah.
snacks, which I did because so many of my collages were tiny. Just little snacks. Just a little something something.
So if you're not following Mandy, go ahead over, give her a follow. It's really fun. Um, it is a little like opening, like literally opening a sampler box of chocolates. You have no idea what you're going to get every time you open her Instagram, and it is awesome. So thank you again so much, Mandy, for trusting us with a piece of your work and letting us include it.
Thank you. And I'm so sorry I can't stay. I do have something else that I've got to be at, but I've read the things and I've seen the art and it is all glorious. Thank you for including me. Really honored.
Right. Thank you. All right. Next up, we have one of my favorite people in the world, Cindy King. Cindy King is a force of nature, a poet, a professor, a purveyor of kindness in the world. Recently, she's taken to mending in public, which is a community building practice that invites others, friends or strangers, to join her in mending things literally in public, mending things that are in need of repair. This could be as simple as a sweater with a hole in it, or a stuffed animal that has been well loved and maybe needs a little TLC. It's also a clear example of Cindy's approach to the world that we too can be mended. Cindy's work often explores what it takes to mend us, and I am so thrilled to have her with us this evening. So, Cindy, all yours.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to read three poems this evening, and the first one is from the first issue of Aster Asterales, and I am really happy for Donna and Rachel coming together and having a collaborative project together. It looks amazing, and can't wait to see who else is gonna come down the line. So, let's see. I think I'm wanting to share my screen so that I can show you the art that's next to the piece. I think it's a nice pairing. Is that okay?
I would have to change the settings for that. Let me see if I can do it.
Oh, if it's not okay, it's fine. I just wanted to.
Try it and see.
It's okay. It's not working, but
Okay, apologize.
no worries. I just want to do the thing where I show the art, but it's okay. Anyway, you should definitely check out Mandy's beautiful water protection piece that is in the first issue next to this poem, which is titled Mini Moon. Um, so there was an asteroid called 2024 PT5 and it came from the Arjuna asteroid belt. It entered Earth's orbit on September 29th, 2024. And it stayed until November 25th, 2024. And some people referred to it as the mini moon. The woman who tries to leave me alone and adrift in conversation physically turns away from the table when I arrive. I wave, but she's not looking. An algorithm sometimes reveals a lot of introvert memes. I used to throw flat rocks at water. Lake Erie or the creek in Indiana. Your index finger has to connect with the thin sides, not the flat, broad side. The sound of the stones hitting the water and never sinking. What's that sound? A tongue halfway out in acute admonishment. Skipping and never sinking. The mini moon sweeping horseshoe-wise 2 months as a song in our atmosphere. I think my longest skip was 5 splashes before the rock sank and I was trying to beat someone else's record. The creek bank never ran out of rocks to throw, but I couldn't beat its numbers. The river glazed with blue sky, the thing it could never shake. The person who skipped the rock 7 times so long ago, I can't remember who it was. Are we sure the mini moon is not affecting our minds? Outside, the sun still hangs in the air. People walk in different directions, each holding a cup of coffee. And my second poem is Love and Dreams. A sculptured white cloud. The cloud of tiny water droplets, heavy as 300 elephants. Inside it, sometimes an airplane slides through, but it just waits for the hot day, a meadow, to float over where it will get smaller, smaller, against the blue, peel down another minute, weigh a bit less, and drift until it is a scrape, a mist, an interval, a slip, then gone. Then another cloud moves in over the tree line, a traffic of clouds, right into the warmth. And the last poem I'm going to read, I may have watched a lot of videos this past summer of a young woman who does a lot of Reiki energy healing, but she also has dowsing rods. And with the dowsing rods, she communicates with energies or spirits that she believes is there. And she asked them to say yes or no by moving the dowsing rods. And not moving the dowsing rods means no answer. So sometimes she'll guess the name of the person of the energy that's there. And I listened to enough of them that I only wrote down the ones that seem to repeat. So, chief agreements. The future has not yet been determined. It's a free will universe. Time is layered and sliced. All questions about elections receive a no answer. Trees talk to each other, and what else? Something about Jesus is an ascended master. The future has not yet been determined. Is purgatory a place of integrating into the spirit world? Yes. Are people who practice Santeria worshiping demons? No. Is the Antichrist a specific person? No. Are quantum phenomena related to spiritual experiences? Yes. Is there an intelligent force guiding the universe? No. Is there something guiding the universe? Yes. Is it we as a collective guiding the universe's energy? No. Is all energy guiding the universe? Yes. Can our minds get healed simply by living? Yes. Do books have souls? Yes. Do books have energy consciousness? No. Does sunburn cause skin cancer? Yes. Does giving blood harm us? No. Is the universe expanding? No. Even though we have evidence that it is? No. Is it that we are becoming more aware of how immense it is? No. Is the universe contracting? Yes. Did Jesus Christ dream? Yes. Was Nikola Tesla an extraterrestrial? No. Does having cut your hair impede your intuition? No. Does having longer hair help your intuition? Yes. Wait, so having longer hair only helps with intuition in a small way? Yes. Do dreadlocks help with our nervous system? Yes. Is our universe part of another living being? Yes. Does Source think aliens are from the dark side? No. Can rods open up portals? No. Is sweeping an intimate form of witchcraft? Yes. Do we live in a loop in the sense that the energy is constantly recycling? Yes. When we die, does someone who loved us come to pick us up? Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Cindy. I think that's maybe the best version of the afterlife that I've heard, is that somebody we love comes to pick us up. I would love that.
Me too. Hi, Angel.
All
Okay,
right.
I think we're turning things over to me for the next few introductions. Our next reader is Travis Chiwing Lau. I first became acquainted with Travis's work. I want to say it's probably 7 or 8 years ago when I came across a poem of his in Rogue Agent, which is a journal that I love. And I've kind of been following his work online ever since. And I always admire that there's a tenderness and deftness of image in Travis's poems that I love. Um, he always makes me as a reader feel welcome into his poem, as if he's opening up a door, and kind of letting me peek in. So I can't tell you how excited Rachel and I were that he said yes to sharing a piece with us for this first issue. So, Travis, I'll ask you to unmute and turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Donna. What an introduction. And in so many ways, I feel like the goal of my work and my teaching is about opening doors for people. So it means a lot that you felt welcomed. So I just wanted to thank Donna and Rachel again for bringing us all together. I mean, what an incredible lineup of artists together. I feel slightly starstruck just being in this room and following Cindy of all people. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Travis Lau. My pronouns are he, him, his. I am joining you from Columbus, Ohio. I teach literature, particularly the 18th and 19th century British literature at Kenyon College, a small liberal arts college here in Central Ohio. Just for accessibility reasons, in the chat is an access copy of the three poems I'm going to be reading. My hope is that if you need to follow along, this will be useful for you. And if you have anything that I can help with during the process, I'm happy to try and offer it. So The poem that I submitted for the first issue was my attempt to talk about the solstice. I did this as a part of a sort of mini writing workshop. We drew words out, and I got the word solstice. And I feel like I wanted to talk about the solstice without immediately thinking about the seasons. So I wanted to think about light and the sort of brevity of that light in solstice periods. And this was my attempt, a sort of, I guess, meditation on a particular encounter with a former partner of mine and one of the last encounters that we had. So this is Solstice Once. When the sun stood still, we marked the occasion by how early the shadows cut themselves at the knee. Dusk's daily butchery without rest, without doubt in its reddening. A philosophy of quiet, absence itself preaching loudly to those who not only see, but listen. The light delivers its sermon, and you know the way awe arrests me, here by the lapping edges, my own edges cooling like the limits of belief. But just as other souls are perforated by the pavement, the verses change into a golden, gone. The next two poems I have for you are from a forthcoming collection that will be out hopefully in May or June. This is a collection about tenderness. And the collection is aptly titled What's Left is Tender. So it really means a lot, Donna, that you've described my work as tender. In so many ways, I feel like I've been trying to think about tenderness as a feeling, as a sensation, as a theory, a praxis. So this collection is trying to think through a little bit of that. And what better way to do that than a poem that tries to think about that word very specifically? This is my, let's just say, shoddy attempt at a pantoum. And this poem is entitled, When Did We Learn That Hitting Things Made Them More Tender? When did we learn that hitting things made them more tender? Rather than a caress, we prefer the mallet that softens the chew. We make them more tender for the crassness of a need. The mallet that softens the chew breaks apart humble flesh, for the crassness of a need takes no care in breaking apart humble from flesh, limp now with submission. Taking no care, we together limp now with submission toward each other. We together praise the blows that ache us toward each other back into new hardness. Praise the blows that ache us. This is how we put our backs into new hardness when we could have remained soft. My last poem is a poem I wanted to write to my body for a really long time. I live with scoliosis-related disabilities. I have two curves in my spine. So a lot of my work has been trying to think through what it means to live with, through, and alongside disability. And this poem is entitled Abecedarian for a Body Misunderstood. Abdication, a misdeed I charged you with, brokered thin peace between us, one so comely that I believed it required no fine dressing, of a wound, of an indignity eventually passing its way into hardness, fast and firm. But this belied what else was graven, that I do not have all the years to harp on the paths you took and the ill forms you assumed when they were really just my own, despite my every attempt at knavery increasingly bumbled. Can you forgive a lonely man for his haste, his refusal to stay manacled to what always already was his natural partner, merely vying for the same breath, still orienting itself to this life? Patient you yet remain beside me in the quick of this life, so full already with such rioting that we need nothing more than succor from one another once given from the teat. And yes, I know that your grace is undeserved, but what I beseech you with now are vows, those sacred things, to wend this world together, tenacious and full of your tender zeal. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you so much, Travis. Beautiful work. Was not expecting it not to be, but really stunning. We appreciate you being here so much. Um, our next reader is going to be Joseph Leza. Um, although we all know that Twitter or X is like a dumpster fire at this point, I can thank it for introducing me to Joseph and bringing him into my orbit. Um, and especially bringing his book, I'm Never Fine, into my orbit. It's one of the most honest and wonderful things about grief that I've ever read. Highly recommend it to you if you haven't read it. So I was so excited and honored when he agreed to share newer work with us. He also writes poetry and has an amazing poem called Call Me Baby, which I love. And he never fails to be a bright spot in my day when I do choose to go on social media. Um, Also, his hair I have nominated for Eighth Wonder of the World, along with poet Maggie Smith. So he has all of those wonderful things going for him: the writing, the personality, the hair, and I give you Joseph Leza.
Thank you very much, Donna. I really appreciate that. Hopefully you guys can hear me. Hopefully you also enjoy this like green screen Jimmy rig I've had to do here because I have a MacBook that operates with a pull start. It's so old, and so I need a green screen in order to do this, but I had to because my piece takes place in a museum, and I just needed to have Matt's work up in a museum-like setting. But I want to thank Rachel and Donna for, soliciting me to be a part of this journal. I think this is the first time I've been solicited for something that wasn't indecent. And it's just been great to share this work. So just to speak a little bit about the piece that I'm going to be reading from, a lot of the work that I'm doing lately seems to be exploring this very American problem we seem to have when it comes to building our personality and tying so much of our like human value into what it is we do, our jobs, our titles, and what have you, and kind of exploring what happens when that's not there to prop us up anymore. So in this particular piece, I'm about a year into being unemployed. I have flown to Copenhagen with my friends, spending money I don't have, running from my problems. And I am on my way on my own into the Danish Architecture Center, where I'm surrounded by all of these raw materials and, a glance of a random handsome stranger sort of begins this journey across time where I'm ultimately asking myself, what am I made of? So I'm going to pick the piece up where I'm entering the museum. Just before entering, a red flash called from the corner of my eye. It was a sign posted at the inlet to the canal that read, Vis Hensen, sei langsomt. The words meant nothing to me in the moment, but I had long been charmed by this language that, with all respect, sounded like English spoken with a mouthful of peanut butter. So I snapped a picture, making a mental note to send the words through Google Translate the next time I had a solid Wi-Fi connection. Luckily, in Europe, even the fire hydrants have free Wi-Fi. They're aggressive about it. There are no passwords, no codes at the bottom of Chipotle receipt. It's just there. Sure, networks named Leica Mobile underscore Ofteling underscore free triggered my inner American skeptic, but upon considering the notion of Danish hackers, I surmised the worst they could do to my phone would be to give it universal health care. So I clicked connect without a second thought and breezed into the lobby. Past a long stretch of escalator, I flashed my student ID and a desperate smile at the front desk and made my way into the welcome center. It was there that the walls offered a panel by panel history of the site. Where once stood an old brewery, the blocks had risen, giving home to exhibition spaces, offices, co working spaces, a cafe, a bookstore, a fitness center, a restaurant, 22 apartments, and an underground car park. Emblazoned above it all was the phrase, architecture and design create the framework of our lives. And it was true. Here within the very framework of this building was life, an entire self contained civilization. It would come as no surprise that, in true Scandic fashion, the structure was as self sustaining as it was efficient. The abundance of glass allowed for both natural lighting and heating, diminishing their reliance on external energy sources. And thanks to the nearby harbor, they could leverage the benefit of seawater cooling. The attraction was in full compliance with the UN Global Compact of 2008, the Planet Copenhagen Manifesto of 2009. It neutralized its own carbon usage, and if my limited Danish was correct, it also cured cancer. On my way to the start of the exhibition, I stopped to retrieve my phone, recalling the sign that had caught my attention outside. I pulled up the snapshot, punched the alphabet soup into my translator, Vis Hensen, sei langsomt, and held out my hands for some cherries, only to have Serendipity's slot machine spit out lemons. What I thought might be an Easter egg of wisdom turned out to be a simple warning to passing seacraft. Show consideration, sail slowly. Not exactly the prophecy I was looking for. Inside the center, I found the curation to be not unlike many of the modern art museums in the States. The placards along the room's exterior told the story of regional design and architecture, while from the floor sprung pedestals and glass cases housing miniatures and scale models of more recent constructions, meant to showcase how the ethos of modern Danish style continued to draw inspiration and instruction from its earliest days. As I moved along the outskirts of the space, I watched a Viking longhouse construct itself panel by panel, saw a so-called primitive society pound the earth flat, erect complex grid walls out of hewn timber and fill the spaces with clay and animal dung. I saw them weave a football field of grasses and branches and reeds to lay as a nearly impenetrable roof. And then I thought about the floating shelf from my first apartment that would always toss my belongings to the floor because despite the computer in my back pocket, I hadn't been able to unravel the complexities of a toggle bolt. At the heart of the Viking room was a massive expanse of roof thatching, recreated for an exhibit called Irreplaceable Landscapes, where visitors could experience some of these crude elements against their own bodies. Never one to pass on a crude interaction, I slipped off my shoes and socks, leaving them with the gaggle of other abandoned footwear, and stepped onto the field of flattened straw. For a minute or so, I meandered, closing my eyes and enjoying the satisfying crunch that accompanied each step. Eventually, I settled on an empty patch where, amidst the projections of blackbirds and the hushed exchanges of my neighbors, I thought I might just exist for a moment. Intrusive thoughts, though, had other plans. One of the benefits of traveling with a companion is having an external force to keep you present, keep you moving. In the absence of that, the mind gets to thinking. And if you're someone like me, it gets to thinking about problems. So it wasn't long before, on an 8th century roof, I was forced to confront my 21st century predicament. I thought about having to leave the next morning and about all that waited for me at home was an inbox full of rejection emails. I thought about the day I got laid off, how unsettling it had been, and yet how quickly confident I'd been that in short order I'd land something new, something better. I thought about the applications, the phone screens, the false starts, the interviews, the project assignments, the final rounds, the fraught optimism, and the delayed repudiation, and how with each pass another layer of self-assurance was stripped away until at the end of a year I was left not so much a person as I was just the raw materials of one. So paper thin had I been cut, I wondered if I could even successfully shelter a Viking family from the rain. Just before I could fully give in to the impulse to return to the lobby and ask one of the docents if I could fill out an application, some soft thuds and crunches brought me back to the present. The proximal heat of a passing human brushed against my cheek in time for me to open my eyes and catch a passing set, one that lingered on mine a split second too long, though long enough to pull me upright. The eyes disappeared behind drapes of curly brown hair belonging to a young guy who seemed to be museuming alone, just like me. He was about medium height, lithe, with a complexion that suggested he too may not be a local. I watched him, not at all subtly, step into his sneakers with an aim to see if he'd lift his head and perhaps confirm that the lingering had been intentional. And he did, but a bit less confident this time, darting to the next room the moment he caught me staring. To be fair, I've never been good at reading signals, always afraid of being caught with my figurative pants down. To that day, a man could self-immolate on my front porch, and my reflex reaction would be to sift through the ashes for pictures of his boyfriend. However, found myself at a point in time where I'd gladly have been anyone other than myself, now seemed as good a time as any to rail against my gut instinct. What followed took ages. In the Romanesque room, the Viking longhouses gave way to churches and cathedrals, arched windows, smooth stone columns gave way to wood. I gave way to a feeling of total unease, wanting, on the one hand, to have the experience I came to have, and not allow misjudgment to squander my last remaining hours in a fool's paradise. On the other hand, wanting equally as badly not to be single in a museum yet again, to not just be another artifact. I had never been more poised to reach my hand across the velvet rope, even if it meant breaking something. So I reached across 150 years, into the Gothic era. That's where I found him. Sights drawn upward, where an image from a fresco portrayed two robed women being menaced by a big-eared, big-horned, webbed-footed creature with a piece of parchment clutched in his outthrust claw. I sidled closer, roundly, to try to make out the scribbles, just in time for the demon to reveal its lineage. From out the side of my stranger's silhouette burst a cluster of jagged edges, an asymmetrical mass of steel at 1/100th scale, with hundreds of spiky balconies blooming forth, more like a military flail than what it actually was, a housing development. Despite the violent scene, my new infatuation appeared intact. In fact, he hadn't even noticed his own impaling. As I drew parallel, his gaze fell, and with it went a mudslide of dense brown curls. Whatever concern I had for the almost certain death of the tiny citizens in the building below were erased by astonishment. Astonishment at how each chunky twist leapt from his crown to threaten destruction, and how just as quickly they bungeed back into feathery place. The physics just didn't make sense. Such mass and such force should have surely snapped his neck. And yet he slipped into the next exhibit, intact and unaware that he'd likely disrupted the tectonic shift of an entire continent. In the Renaissance, the arts were granted more importance, and as churches begat more churches and steeples learned to ring out the passage of time, we danced around the face of the clock, this stranger and I, like the minute hand chasing the hour. Then came Baroque, where light and shadow played a role, never fully giving either of us a clear look at the other. It was that same light, however, that allowed for the volley of some discernible sideways glances. And those very shadows that cloaked our mutual throat clearing, obscuring what might well have been invitations. Invariably, as choppier, more symmetrical facades gave structures the illusion of movement, so too did our own movement seem at times intentional, and at others only fantastical. It was somewhere during Rococo, amidst its shell-clad cornices and flower-laden flatware, that I began to wonder if there was something truly deeper to this, or if, like that which surrounded us, all of this amounted to nothing more than a bunch of peacocking. And as if summoned, neoclassicism arrived to test that theory. In the abutting room, the Danes of the late 18th century shifted their focus from the exterior to the interior. One mind, shouted the walls in big block letters. One form. Where design was concerned, it became about harmony and economy. So it stood to reason that if the stranger and I had genuine designs on each other, a shared formation could verify a shared mindset. The fact that we were not the only visitors would prohibit more obvious overtures. I couldn't strut like a spring bird or scream, "Are you gay?" across a semi-crowded room. Instead, like the neoclassics, my measures would have to be more economical. For instance, when I stepped around him to read a panel about Bertel Thorvaldsen, I'd close the space between us just narrow enough for it to feel purposeful. And when, shortly after parking myself, I'd feel the hairs on the back of my neck stand at attention, I'd test again. This time, he'd meet me on the opposite side of a display case. And as we'd pretend fascination at a sampling of clay tile, I'd match him, sigh for sigh, each of us holding, neither of us moving, as if one of us was daring the other to break the formation. And if you want to find out what happens after that, I'll let you read it.
Thank you
you
so
guys.
much, Joseph. It's wonderful. Um, yeah, it was an instant, like, yes, when we first got that piece. It's such great insight and humor. And it makes you really think about the other people when you're in public spaces like that in a different way, which is wonderful. Our next reader is artist and reader, and you'll find out why in a minute, is Megan Merchant. Um, Megan, I've known Megan's work for a long time. Megan is a shapeshifter, but not one of those like creepy alien ones that wants to like confuse your family and make them think they're you. Um, but someone who is consistently um, pushing herself to do new things. So Megan is a artist, and her art is featured in Asterales, but she's also a writer, a poet. And I've been reading her work for a long time, and then just a year or two ago realized she was making art. And I love the art that she shares online because it seems for Megan that experimentation is a joy for her. And to me, that's a model of this kind of continuous learning that artists do that is so wonderful and inspiring to see. And besides that, she's also a community builder and an editor. And in addition, a really cool person to be around. Rachel and I both loved the pieces that she sent for the journalists. The two of them are featured in the journal, and we're so honored that she's here tonight to talk a little bit about her art, but I think she's also going to read you some poems. So you get like a double whammy. So, Megan, it's all you. Okay, hold on, Megan.
There we go.
There you are. All right.
Thank God for the chat, right? Help. Hello. Oh my gosh, Donna, beautiful introduction. Thank you so much, Donna and Rachel. This labor of love of yours is fantastic and such a needed space, especially right now. And I know firsthand how much goes into this creation and all of this work. So thank you very, very much for that. And thank you for including my visual art pieces. I have two of them. I actually started my journey with visual arts in 2020 when we were in quarantine. And for the first time in my life, I mean, I've written through every tragedy, trauma, struggle. I wrote through my mother's memory loss and her death. I wrote through my son's speech loss. I wrote through miscarriages and all kinds of life challenges. But when we went into lockdown, the poems just disappeared. They left completely. And I realized how much I pull from the everyday conversations and images and sights and energy. And I knew that I was in some serious trouble because that just was not available for me. And I knew I had to try to find a new method of keeping and maintaining that relationship that I have with image because it was so important to me. For me, it was a way of broadcasting emotion, personal experience, questions, anything out into the world. And when that left, I felt really distraught. So I ordered some canvas and paint and paintbrushes, and I had zero idea what I was doing. And while my children were doing their Zoom meetings on school, I sat next to them and just gave it a go with full beginner's mind and so much joy and made massive messes everywhere. I mean, I mean, like horrible, beautiful messes, and was instantly hooked. For me, the difference between the two disciplines, poetry is it's like a lot pulling from my body, pulling from the outside world, trying to figure out how things are connected, what meaning and what shape they can take. And then visual arts for me is really quiet and very serene and very imaginative, and it lives in the land of ideas for me. And so I was really grateful that I was able to cultivate a secondary practice and maintain that relationship with image. The two pieces that I have included are both made with walnut ink and acrylic inks and some acrylic paint on one of them, but with a straw from my coffee cup because I feel like such a bad steward of this planet, or even using a straw, a plastic straw. And so I was like, I need to make use of this. And so I just created paintings using the inks and a coffee straw. And I've recently been very obsessed with creating these Bringer of Flowers. It's a whole series now these weird creatures who just bring each other flowers. And I think it's a really beautiful gesture and in a lot of ways a mirror of what I'm trying to do with art. I'm trying to offer this part of myself and this part of my experience and this part of the conversation into the world. So, with that said, I'm going to share a very short poem. And this is from Hortensia in Winter, which came out in November with New American Press. And I think this defines a lot of my aesthetic. Subjects to consider for both painting and writing. Film on my teeth after eating a hard-boiled egg. Why anyone would call blood crimson. Chopping wood on a day you can see your breath. The clicking sound that mahjong tiles make. The speed at which they are placed. A wind chime strung with bones. The way winter light feels most earnest in the morning. His chin as it pressed against my shoulder blade. The muscles of grief that cramp without warning. Why men are allowed to age, the absence of a societal tantrum. The farmer's almanac that everyone in town is mumbling about. Radishes in a white bowl. Glue hardened on the window that looks like frost. Scratches on old records that are a kind of music. Gray hairs in the sink. How he unhooked the curtains and wrapped me naked in what light they still held. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you to everyone who shared this evening. I am in awe of all of you.
Thank you so much, Megan. It's really inspiring to hear from both you and Mandy that your art journeys just started a few years ago. Because I think that I could say the same thing, although, and I think Rachel could say something similar, that kind of keep that you needed to keep reaching for something when words kind of failed us. Thank you so much for being here. We loved showcasing your art, and your writing is also beautiful. I think Rachel is going to introduce our next reader.
That is correct. So let me find his little profile. Okay. So our next reader is Mike Neese. I could say a lot of things about Mike Neese, all of them good. I've watched his writing evolve over nearly 20 years of friendship. I did the math today and it kind of blew me away. And there are moments from his work that I think about for years after reading them. A family fighting over the last crescent roll, a Bad Religion CD inside the Honda Odyssey that springs into existence again and again where it isn't wanted, a hole in the center of the earth that literally gives me nightmares and hits on that deep-seated phobia that I have. His stories are quirky tales of misfits who sometimes turn out to be heroes and sometimes turn out to be just misfits. They demand, though, that we reconsider the world, that we let go of what we think we know and trust Mike to show us something new. So I'm going to turn it over to Mike and let him tell us a new story.
Thank you so much, Rachel. That is extremely kind of you. It is a delight to be here. And I want to echo all of the gratitude expressed by everybody else who has read so far. It is a real joy to see the work curated in such a thoughtful way that you guys have put together here, including my background by Kyle Lang. I don't know how he made it. It is very mysterious to me, but I'm glad to be amidst these mountains. So I'm going to read a excerpt from my story. It's called Nomads. The story takes place in South Jersey, and it is about two sisters. The framing, which we're going to skip over, is an older sister getting word that her younger sister has been spotted climbing out of an open landfill where they both used to work. And now we're going to zoom back to childhood. So if there are a few references to some nostalgic items, that's why we're in the past. So thank you guys for your attention, and thanks again for letting me read from my odd story, Rachel and Donna. At 14, Camille wouldn't have described the unmowed acre of weeds around her house as chaotic. Mom knew where to expect which vegetables in the summer, and Dad had his plans for the broken slot machines in the pigweed. Each would be a limb in the monster he was welding, Slotzilla. He would sell it to Ripley's someday, or else display it on the lawn for the weird NJ crowd. He was at his work table the morning he fell, fusing the metallic big toe onto what would have been its left foot. Nearby, in one of the less buggy patches of grass, Camille had just bested her sister Eva in a game of Uno. She said Uno, looked up from the cards, and noticed Dad lowering himself to the ground. For a second, it just seemed odd. Then his knees buckled, and the welding gun slipped from his hand. They all worked together, lifting him into the Camry. Mom didn't believe in calling 911. She just shouted at the girls to stay home, cursed as they forced their way into the car with her. Just drive, Camille begged from the back seat. She watched Dad's chest rise and fall beside her. This made her feel better, his breath, but it grew shallow after a minute and imperceptible after another 2 or 3. His shirt rode up as the people in scrubs transferred him onto a stretcher, revealing the new shape of his abdomen, a Capri Sun sucked dry. He died of sudden internal bleeding, according to the doctor. Mom would have none of it. Where's the blood? She howled. If he bled to death, where'd it go? Camille squeezed her hand, but everything the doctor said just made Mom more upset. How the blood might not be in the body anymore. A portal could have opened in one of his arteries, the doctor said. A portal to where? It's hard to say. I'm sure you've heard about them. They just found one in Syracuse that goes to Florida. Big one. Camille was only vaguely aware of the phenomenon, but she was young enough to accept it at face value. It was different for Mom. Mom spent the days that followed seeking corroboration from anyone she could. The mailman, the gas attendant. You heard of these things? You believe in this? It seemed everyone had heard about portals, but Mom. The examiner's office called later that week to say they found it in Dad's neck, the portal, but that it was too small for their scope. They offered to rent a smaller scope for some staggering fee. Camille had no idea how her family would survive without Dad, how her life would change. Of all the questions plaguing her, the location of his blood didn't even register. But Mom couldn't stand the mystery, that pinhole through which he'd seeped. She needed to know where it led. She refused to sign off on burial or cremation. Her obsession infected Eva, who pestered Camille with her theories. Maybe his blood rained down in the woods, she said, and now he's in the dirt, making stuff grow. Weird dad stuff. That's actually really stupid, Camille said. Maybe his blood is floating in space. I'll play Uno, Camille said, if you stop talking about Dad's blood. That summer, Mom got deep into scratch-offs. God had dealt them an excruciating blow. By her logic, they were due for a big hit. The crumpled up tickets seemed to multiply on their own. No matter how often Camille emptied the kitchen garbage, it brimmed with them. As she rummaged through the upper cabinets one night, looking for candy Mom sometimes hid there, she noticed Eva below her, fishing an unscratched ticket out from under the fridge. Camille climbed down and snatched it up before she could get any ideas. These are evil, she said. Eva shot her a glare. I'm not stupid. I never called you stupid. Eva brooded anyway. She asked where they'd go if they had to move. The question plagued Camille as well, though Mom had her job sorting trash at the waste center. It was Dad's income as a slot mechanic that had always paid the bills. Now, on top of their mortgage and utilities, they incurred months of storage fees from the funeral home, and a collector kept calling about the hospital bill. "We'll be nomads," Camille said. When she booted up the computer in the living room, hoping to find a friend on AIM, the screen flashed a message about being shut down improperly. She'd seen Mom unplug it out of impatience before. This time, after clicking Restore Programs, a browser opened to Mom's job search. She was supposed to be looking for better paying work. The last message was 2 months old. She stopped job hunting, Camille said. "Let's just do it for her," Eva said. "There's got to be something." It wasn't the worst idea, Camille thought. She heard Mom drunk snoring down the hall, out for the night. But scrolling through the positions, Camille couldn't imagine her in any of them. Everyone wanted someone who worked well with others, someone with soft skills, a term she'd never heard of, but was sure excluded Mom. She searched until she found a part-time opening at the waste center where Mom already worked. No experience necessary. Camille had been there a few times. She knew herself to have a high tolerance for gross things, having cleaned out the meat freezer in the garage when the motor died. It wasn't that hard to picture herself in one of those reflective green vests, shepherding trash from place to place. The next morning, as Mom sat slumped over the kitchen table, dazed from the rum and Benadryl she'd taken to sleep, Camille made her proposal. Help her lie about her age to the waste center, and she would help pay the bills. She'd been the tallest in her class for years. At first, Mom just shook her head. It's like you want the social worker showing up. But after a moment, she looked away, rubbed her temples. How much does it pay? Finally, Camille thought, Mom would face reality. According to the state, the county built its landfill too close to the airport. Trash attracts birds, birds fly into jet engines, and so one morning a supervisor handed Camille a flare gun and told her to fire into the air wherever she saw the flocks settle. Though she got dizzy on hot days, firing the gun offered moments of power. The gulls she'd shoot away from her funnel cake at the beach never flew more than a few feet before circling back. Now she had a weapon that struck fear in their hearts. How frantically they scattered when she pulled the trigger. The rest of the job she tolerated. She held her own, she felt. But no matter how often she asked, Mom never gave her a sense of where things stood with the bills. "I don't want you worrying about that," she said one night on the ride home from work. She pulled over for gas, went in to pay, and emerged with a fistful of fast cash tickets. Even with Camille's help, the lights went out the following spring. For a month, they lived by candlelight, unable to watch TV or blow dry their hair. Mom bought tickets through it all. She let the storage fees at the funeral home pile up until they cremated Dad against her will. She never let anyone forget it. After she passed out on codeine one night, Camille answered the phone to find herself in an interrogation over Dad's hospital bills. The collector was so loud, Eva peered up from her sketch pad. "I thought there was a thing for that," she said after Camille hung up on him, "like charity care or something." "We already did that." Camille's voice shook. "It doesn't pay for everything." "There was a sign for it in the hospital. I saw the fucking sign." Camille was sure she could feel Eva glaring at her, but she looked up to find her sister's eyes on the wall mirror, her own reflection. She asked if Camille thought she could pass for 16, the minimum working age. For a moment, the prospect of a third stream of income pulled Camille out of her panic. "Yeah," she said, studying Eva's face, the readiness in her dark eyes. She felt a twitch of relief. "You probably could." When they opened that Syracuse to Florida portal to the public, everyone started crowing about the search for more shortcuts, as if a Swiss cheese world was something to celebrate. Camille did her best to ignore every mention of it, the new porousness of everything. She grew deeply trypophobic. She learned to focus on the minutiae of getting through each day. Eva survived her first 30 days at the waste center without attracting too much scrutiny, despite how her mind would wander. You could see the landfill from most of the open air buildings, and Eva's eyes were drawn to its riotous shapes and colors. With the occasional nudge, she kept up with the adults. On the ride home from work one morning, Mom went on, forever praising her for it. The both of them. My girls are so grown up, she said, red-eyed and hungover, fighting the Camry's misalignment. Just promise you don't get comfortable here. You're both too bright. Her frizzy perm bounced along the speed bumps. I'll be damned if you don't get to do whatever you want with your lives. She was always saying stuff like this. They started the day at the pre-sort belt, intercepting anything that could jam up the machines. Mom and Camille on one side of the belt, Eva and an old-timer on the other. The day's perils included a never-ending VHS collection. The reels of tape would get tangled in the rollers, they were told, so each cassette had to be plucked from the flow of trash. Whenever Camille was sure they'd seen the last of them, another Land Before Time would slide into view. None of them saw the cassette go in, but Camille wasn't surprised to hear it when the sorting machine finally ground to a halt. They ripped the tape from its mouth in silence until Vince, the old-timer, said, I told her these things are tanglers, nodding at Eva. This is why you don't hire charity cases. Mom threw down her gloves. Vince balled up a mess of tape and threw it in her direction. It fluttered to the ground after only a few feet. Wish you'd hurry up and win your fucking lotto, he said. I'm not a babysitter. Eva hid her face as Mom hurled threats at him, each of which Vince promised to report. Camille was sure Mom would have gotten them all fired if she hadn't held her back with both hands. They were split up for the day instead. Camille spent the rest of it spraying goop out of plastics. When she clocked out, Eva was nowhere to be found. At the loading bay, her eyes rose to the storm clouds gathering outside. They'd grown darker over the course of the day, somehow brightening the trash below. The white waste, in particular, that field of dead appliances, gleamed in the darkness. Hell would freeze over before anyone scrapped them, according to Mom. Gotta deal with that Freon and shit like it's radioactive. Camille pictured Eva brooding among the ovens and water heaters, attracting more unwanted attention. Her sister was mousy, defenseless, obviously underage. It would take only a little tug for someone like Vince for the whole charade to unravel. Camille plucked one of the bright green ponchos off the wall and strode out into the rain. She felt the mountain of trash looming over her as she looked for Eva. In a town as flat as theirs, below the water table, Dad would say, it seemed like an actual mountain. Examining it from every angle, she found no sign of her sister. Only after the crack of thunder and a fresh hammering of rain did she turn around to catch the flicker of bright green among the white waste. Eva's poncho. Camille found her sitting against a fridge, face buried in her hands. The flare gun lay in the dirt at her feet. Camille picked it up, tucked it in the back of her jeans. Did you clock out? Eva shook her head. That's a write-up. We need to be smarter than that. Mom needs to be smarter, Eva said. Struggling against the wind, a plague of grackles fluttered past them. She's not going to change, Camille said. You have to grow up. She's only going to need us more. Eva avoided her gaze. She watched the bird shelter in a row of washing machines. Though she wanted nothing to do with Eva's self-pity, Camille felt her own eyes starting to water. She leaned back against the fridge across from Eva's, lowered herself to the ground. The next burst of thunder made all the grackles jump. In the corner of her eye, Camille saw them buzzing around a single front-load washing machine. The door hung open an inch or two, just wide enough for the birds to slip inside. As more and more streamed into the machine, Eva looked transfixed. How are they all fitting in there? Camille just shook her head. Eva rose to her feet and approached the washer, bracing herself for a panic swarm. But when she opened the door, nothing came out, not one bird. Camille got up and stared into the machine's empty hull with her, waiting for the explanation that didn't come. Eva's face lit up. It's a portal. Camille tried not to hear it. She'd done her best to ignore every utterance of the word, but she couldn't ignore Eva scrambling past her into the machine. Camille grabbed her by the calf, but the soaked denim slipped through her fingers. In an instant, Eva was gone. Screaming after her, Camille got no response. Her head pounded. She crouched down again, leaning into the washer. It was empty. Over the peeling rust and bird shit, she shimmied her way inside. She pointed a nervous finger at the back wall and poked it. Her finger went right through. It felt like nothing, like air. Wincing, she pushed her face through the wall. On the other side lay a dark, rocky tunnel. She wriggled a few feet into it before taking a breath. The air tasted sweet and earthy, free of the landfill stench. 10 or 15 feet in, she saw something, a rock lit by a beam of light. She had to turn on her back, scratching herself all over in the process to glimpse the light source, a crack of blue sky. She just stared up at it until a slender hand reached down to help her. Eva's, but so much stronger than Camille expected. After fighting for every inch, Camille seemed to spring from the earth in one swift motion. She emerged dizzy and half blind. Look, Eva said, nearly whispering. And that's where we'll call it a day. Thank you so much, you guys. It's a pleasure to share from
Thank
Nomads and
you.
to be part of Asterales.
Thank you, Mike. And I know everybody's going to want to go read what happens with the portals because it's a great story, great ending to the story. Um, love Mike's work. We have one more reader. I have been a huge fan of Amorak Huey's work for a long time. So much so that at one point I unofficially appointed myself the president of his fan club. And there were a bunch of us that were discussing t-shirts and whatnot, and we just never made it happen. As far as I know, I am still the president of the fan club. No one has taken that away from me. I think we finally met in person at AWP in Minneapolis, which was 2015, which means that it's now been 10 years that I have been lucky enough to know you in person. Your work for me is so important. It shines a light just on the stuff of being human, and your ability as a writer to turn toward endings in your work that are at this that once on one level they seem like revelations and on another level they seem like something that has lived in your own heart for a really long time and that somebody else found a way to say. You can see I'm getting like choked up. Your work means a lot to me. And so do you. You're one of the most amazing people I've ever met as well. So I've known you for 10 years. I've loved your poems for longer, and you are one of my favorite poets and one of my favorite people. And I was so excited when you said yes to be in this first issue. So I'm just going to let everybody else now hear how amazing you are.
Thank you so much, Donna. That was incredibly kind. And thank you to both you and Rachel for the work you're doing with this journal. It's like such a cool project, and I love the spirit of it and really honored to be included. I'm going to read some poems. I'll start with the poem that's in the journal. I'm not going to do a lot of banter between poems. Just two things to say. One is that I moved to Ohio about a year and a half ago, and it's really weird to live in Ohio. So, and so you'll see that Ohio comes up in the poems. And the other thing is that the word gossamer, besides meaning sort of a gauzy translucent material, its roots are in the word goose summer, the phrase goose summer, which is sort of a surprise period of warmth in late autumn. And so that'll come up important later. So the first poem, the one that's in the journal, I am pretty sure my neighbor has taken a lover. I envy not the sex, not only the sex, but the secret that fuels the sex, the sharedness of it, the two of them alone in their knowing what it is to lay this singular specific body atop this one other body. How common the thirst, how specific the slaking. My neighbor parks on the street, leaves the garage open, the lover pulls in, the door closes its mouth behind them as I recall how you and I started like that. Lips open, breaking a promise made to someone else. Fairy tale protagonists lost in the dark, wet woods, long before anyone knew we were gone. Sometimes by Ohio, I mean this endless field between us, state where we have not kissed, state where we kissed but only once. I mean the trauma of seeming normal, the constant motion like trucks on state highways, carrying things people need or want, as if we could ever know the difference between a place to pass through and a place to rest. I mean the wind lost on its way east. I mean the moon like a gold coin, risen low over knee-high midsummer corn. I mean this dark sky shot bright with desire. Knee-high by the 4th of July. I'm driving through the pinkness of an Ohio sunrise, where everything around me is Ohio, bathed in pink light, and somehow looks exactly like the Ohio someone who has never been to Ohio imagines Ohio to be. And the cornfields are just where they should be this time of year. This is how life goes. Every moment a simulacrum of itself, every season on a loop back toward itself, every place a snow globed version of that same place. Nothing so unique as we'd hoped, not even love. I'm driving neither toward you nor away. The distance between us holds steady. It's amazing we found each other in the first place. Think how a bee carries pollen from one singular tiger lily on the side of a highway in Ohio to another a mile away, or miles. And for the rest of their time blooming on this planet, those two flowers are swollen with each other, the possibility of each other. And that possibility, it turns out, is enough to sustain all of it. Each stem, pistil, petal, stretching open each morning to drink deep the pink lit dew. Morning after a windstorm. We wake to assess our new destiny, detritus or damage. The way forward is a ragged carpet of leaves, snapped twigs, here or there some larger bough, reports of power outages, a road closed, a parking lot blocked. We detour through our day, the storm still alive in our bodies, fresh memory of the moment when the wind let us know that what happened next in our bodies was not entirely up to us. That knot of fear, such pleasure in it. Love poem with magician's assistant. I asked you to cut me in half. Now there are two of me, neither one whole. I asked you to make me disappear. Morning in early June, and it's already hot, and so are you. I want to stand in this newly mown field all day and call your name 3 times, however many times it takes until you appear to grant me 3 wishes, wishes I would no longer need once you have appeared with my name on your lips, my lips on your name. I swear this distance between us is a kind of violence, though perhaps without distance there would be no such thing as desire. The air here smells of overripe berries and drying grass. The sun heats my skin past the point of pleasure, which, my darling, is how I know the field of want is real. And then I'll end with Gossamer. Just when we believe our bodies have adjusted to absence, comes a new season of smoke and wildness. Take me now, in this unexpected heat. Take me until I cannot help but bleat your name in hunger. A horizon of geese naming the sky. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Amorek. I always say it's a wonderful thing to end a reading with love. So that's exactly what we got at the end there. So beautiful. Rachel and I just want to, first of all, I have to also shout out Rachel because she's making it sound like I was this amazing, calm person, and she was the one that was putting out every single fire that was technical. And I was like, I don't know how to do that. I'm an old, I can't figure that out. So this wouldn't happen without both of us working together. And I'm really grateful that I'm doing it with her. Thank you to all of you for being here tonight. Thank you to all of our artists and our writers for being here tonight. And thanks to those of them that couldn't make it as well. As we said in the editor's note of the journal, it's a risk to plant a seed, and what a beautiful thing for us is to see it bloom tonight. We've already started getting submissions for issue 2, which makes us feel like, okay, maybe we did something right. And from what has already come in, we're already very well aware of the fact that we're probably going to have to say no to some really great work. So we thank our first issue contributors for setting a bar that we hope to reach with concurrent issues. And so, Rachel, do you have anything else you want to add?
Just thank you again to everybody, especially to our contributors, without whom we could not have done this.
Thank you so much. I am going to stop the recording, and then I am going